We've got a show about adding charm to your home and garden coming up right after this. During my years as a garden designer, I've enjoyed helping homeowners create private sanctuaries full of beauty and wonder. I find each garden to be a fresh opportunity to explore and create uniquely personal spaces. These are just a few of the gardens I've helped transform into garden homes. Hi, I'm Alan Smith. Welcome to the Garden Home, a show about design and blurring the lines between inside and out. Now, isn't this a magical and beautiful place? Well, I'm actually 3,000 feet above sea level, the Cascade Mountains in western Oregon. Now, in this forest of evergreens, these trees are harvested every year, just the tips of the boughs, for the purpose of creating beautiful holiday fresh greenery. It's an incredibly sustainable product because they're just coming into the forest and gathering the tips of the boughs of these trees. I'll show you how to plant orchids in Denver, plus a visit to an English-inspired country garden in New Jersey. And if you know me, you know I love chickens. And we're going to learn a little bit about the egg hatching process and learn how to make this delicious recipe. So as you can see, we're adding charm all over the place. Now let's get started by a trip to New Jersey. Chris Wiley tells us what inspired her to create this charming country garden.
When I first saw this garden, there was absolutely no color in it. Although the goal was a traditional English garden, it was beyond the point where the delphiniums, the lupins, the foxgloves had bloomed, and at this point there was just foliage and not much happening of interest. The solution was to create a mixed border, which would contain shrubs, perennials, and annuals that would give the colors and textures that would last all season long. To create a mixed garden is to create 3 tiers. A tier of short growing plants along the front. The middle section has plants normally 12 to 24 inches or so tall, and back along the fence, anything 24 inches or taller. We started with planting a few shrubs and roses, which would give us color at different times during the summer, and then we put in our favorite perennials. Some of the ones that are highest performing for us here are Becky Shasta daisies, which are large, white, and long blooming in midsummer. The Coreopsis Zagreb, which is very long blooming and shorter, but spreads quickly into nice thick masses and produces a sharp color. And the Gaillardia, which is a very long blooming, mid-sized plant, which can either be used in the front or the middle of the border, along with other cone flowers in orange, pink, and then we add some annuals to give us color all summer long, which can either be tall, like Cosmos, short, like Verbena, or intermediate ones, like the Lantanas. Looking from a distance at a garden like this, you don't want to see one plant. You want to see a large mass producing a lot of color. Therefore, we tried to plant in groups of 5, 7, or 9. This gives this large mass as if it's one giant plant, although it's many plants growing together. One of the greatest challenges to this garden was that half of the garden is in hot sun and the other half is in a fairly deep shade. The sunny border is easy to have color at all times, but in the shady border we found it a little more difficult to keep color going since our choice of plants was limited. Therefore, we went into some nice foliage plants like Caladiums and large leaf Ligularias, which will give us some texture, as well as some high performance colored plants like Torenia, Riger Begonias, and New Guinea impatiens. Now we find the shady part of the border is as strong as the sunny part of the border. The tall shady plants, such as an Acanthus, which is really spectacular, is something that just makes everyone's eyes move to that point and sets off the shady part of the border. We now have a border that has color from May till October. Things move in and out of bloom, colors, textures, birds, hummingbirds. It's enjoyable to be here, enjoyable to watch.
I recently had the chance to visit the beautiful city of Denver, Colorado. I found this great garden center and had a nice chat with Trila Phelps about transplanting orchids. These orchids are so beautiful. I'm with Trila Phelps, who is a longtime orchid enthusiast. Trila, why are you so excited about orchids?
Well, the colors are amazing. They're exotic and they last a very long time and they're really easy to take care of.
Now, particularly this variety of Phalaenopsis or the butterfly orchid.
Yeah.
Would you recommend this as the starter orchid for someone who's never really gotten into them?
Yeah, I usually always do. And then people that are going to buy housewarming gifts, something like that, where you don't really know what the light conditions are.
Yeah.
This is pretty easy and safe gift to give.
How long could I expect a Phalaenopsis such as this to last with as many buds as we have here?
I'd say 3 to 4 months usually.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you think about the flower power. If you were buying arrangements to go on the table to last as long as 3 or 4 months,
Right.
it would be terribly expensive.
It would be. Yeah.
Well, you know what I love about the Phalaenopsis is that there's virtually an orchid for every room of the house and every color palette.
Yeah, anymore. I mean, it used to be that they'd only be available one time of year, and it was usually in the winter.
Yeah, show me how you would assemble this, because I know it's really as simple as 1, 2, 3 done.
Normally we ask them not to take it out of the pot until after it's finished blooming, because sometimes they can drop their buds and you don't want that to happen. So we would try to find a container that maybe both of the pots would fit into, and I kind of call this faking it out.
Okay.
So when we bring somebody in, they may have their favorite pot, or we'll find one for them, and we just kind of squeeze the root balls, and we get it in just below the lip there.
Yeah.
And then we cover up all our mistakes. And this is a preserved moss, and it's just really soft and easy to use.
It's beautiful. I love that sharp chartreuse color. It's electric.
Yeah, and I think it kind of makes some of the other colors pop.
It's very good in this terracotta pot. Now let's talk about staking, because now with this arrangement we have the grower stake, which is a metal stake, but there are all sorts of interesting natural ways to give it a little support.
Right, pussy willow is great. Normally the growers use like a little clamp, or maybe they'll have a little twist tie that you'll see up at the top.
Yeah.
And before you totally take it off of that, we normally kind of push this in there to replace it. Once we get it in place, then we remove the grower stake.
I see.
And that way we kind of know what they're
That's
already
smart,
doing.
yeah.
And so, and that just takes a couple of minutes, and they're not as fragile as they look. Sometimes we get a little afraid to handle them, and
Yeah, well,
they're pretty tough.
they look so exotic and
Right.
so glamorous.
Right.
You think they are fussy, but they're really not fussy
No,
at all.
they're really not.
Just a tip about light, because you have so much experience and you've literally grown them in the dark.
Right.
With fluorescent lighting. What do you suggest?
Well, for the Phalaenopsis, low light is great. It's used to growing on the floor of a forest, if you can
Yes.
kind of just imagine its natural habitat.
Right.
And so just filtered light is fine, but not intense, too hot.
Yeah, the longevity of the bloom is compromised with too much intense light.
Exactly, and that's something to keep in mind too in the winter, not by the heater or anything like that.
Yeah.
Try to keep them on the cooler side.
Well, I've found that my rule of thumb with them is if I'm comfortable, they're comfortable.
Yeah, and that's a great way of thinking about it, because it's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful. Thank you so much.
Well, thanks.
It is so incredibly beautiful here. You just can't imagine the scale of some of these gorgeous fir trees, and of course the snow adds so much. You know, I'm here in Western Oregon, in the Cascade Mountains at about 3,000 feet, and this is where so much, well, much of the world's fresh greenery is harvested and shipped out from. And I'm trying to find Heidi Berry, who's walking around here, to talk a little bit more about this beautiful, sustainable resource. Heidi, it's so beautiful out here. I can't believe it's snowing. It feels like Christmas.
It does indeed. It's fabulous.
It really is beautiful. Look at these noble firs. Now, these get pruned, I guess, every year.
They do. They do.
And they do a great job of clipping them back. These are noble fir in a forest of Douglas fir.
Yes. And this is very native to this part of Oregon.
It looks like Anthony's knocking it out over there, getting a bunch of this cut off. Looking good, Anthony.
Thank you.
That is just unbelievable. Look how fresh that is. And the aroma is incredible. Now we're at about 3,000 feet here in the Cascades in Oregon, and I think, what is it, about 1 million acres of Christmas tree production going on in this country?
Exactly. And that facilitates a great deal of oxygen.
Well, it does when you think about it. I mean, I read some statistics about that. What is it per acre? It produces per day enough to oxygen for 18 people or something like that.
Yeah, isn't that incredible?
Do the basic math, and you got 1 million acres and 18 million people get a fresh breath of air every day.
Exactly. It doesn't get any greener than that. And actually, you know, the opportunity to, when a Christmas tree is harvested, they reproduce 3 times that many to replace it.
Yeah, so once these are harvested as a tree, and not just cutting them for greenery, but once they're harvested as a tree, then 3 more are planted in their place.
Right, and that particularly happens in Christmas tree farms, whereas where we're cutting it in the environment where it's produced, we don't harvest them at all. We just are clipping them to the point where they can be sustainable and regrow.
Pruning them just as one would in the garden.
Indeed, indeed, exactly.
Very good. Well, it's just thrilling. I mean, getting out here in the snow and the beautiful aroma and all this fresh air, I feel like making a wreath.
I think that's a fabulous idea.
Let's go do one.
Take a little Christmas home.
As a child, I became fascinated with raising various types of poultry, particularly breeds of chickens. Because most people have only seen the plain white poultry that commercial breeders produce for meat and laying eggs, you may be surprised to know that chickens come in an amazing variety of shapes, sizes, patterns, textures, and colors. If you ever have a chance to stop by a poultry show, maybe it's at your county or state fair, you'll think you've stepped into an exotic aviary or some sort of zoo. And each breed you'll find has its own personality and flair. Keith Bramwell, professor of poultry science at the University of Arkansas, takes us into the hatching room to discuss the egg hatching process of many of these beautiful birds. Well, here we're in the hatching room, and Keith's got a big surprise for us. What's going on here, Keith?
Well, we've got some chicks in here, some Plymouth Rocks that we hatched. They just hatched this morning.
Look at those little
and
guys.
We're very anxious to get out of the egg and to kind of do their thing. And so we'll pull these out. And this, when somebody typically gets their chicks, this is what they're going to get. These brand new.
I've got to hold one. You get you another one.
All right, I can do that. We got plenty.
Look at that. Now these, if they hatch this morning, I mean, they're probably only 4 or 5 hours old.
They're going to be just a few hours old, yes. And the chicken itself is designed that it can withstand several hours, maybe even up to 72 hours without the care or without food and water.
Because that yolk.
Because the yolk.
That was in the egg
Yes.
is now inside the bird.
Exactly, and that's kind of nature's way of allowing the mother hen to let all of her chicks hatch at one time, then take them off to find food and water. However, when we care for our birds, we want to give them food and water immediately to get them off to the best start that we can.
Well, these are really big and vigorous.
These are from a bigger breed of Plymouth Rock, like we said, and they will grow to be a good standard size. It's kind of a dual purpose breed, a meat breed, an egg, both. And so these are a bigger bird. If you hatch some of the Bantam varieties, some of the Seabrights or Silkies or Old English or some of these other varieties, chicks are obviously going to be much, much smaller. They come from a smaller egg.
Right, and you can keep the Bantams with the standard breeds in a brooder for a while.
True. You can do it for a while, and it actually is good for them. They all kind of interact. Again, keep each other warm and stuff like that that the chicks like to do. But you really need to watch that, because as you start growing, you get a lot of size difference, and your young chicks could get smothered or trampled by the bigger ones, unintentionally, but it can happen.
Sure. Now, I think one of the great marvels of nature is the egg tooth, which you can see just on the tip of the beak. That actually allows the bird to get out of the shell, doesn't it?
It does. What the egg tooth does, it's a little sharp part of the beak there. It'll eventually fall off in a couple of days, but it allows them to peck through the membrane of the shell and then peck through the shell from the inside out, and then it starts the pecking process around the shell and allows it to hatch eventually. They also have another little muscle called a pipping muscle on the back of their head that goes away. You know, after they hatch, they never need that muscle again, so it just kind of goes away.
Well, I wondered, their head and neck must be very sore after they get out.
Well, they're exhausted. A little chick hatches. As soon as it hatches, it sits there and rests for a while until it gets all warm and fluffy like these chicks, and then they're ready to go. They're very anxious, ready to go.
So if you're ordering chicks from a hatchery, they take them immediately out of a hatcher like this. They've come out of an incubator, they put them in the hatcher, they're out and fluffy and jumping around like these, and then they immediately go into shipping boxes and sent to whatever destination.
Yeah, correct. And that's where, as far as when we ship chicks, that egg yolk that they carry, that's where it helps them. We're allowed to ship them for a 24-hour period. Typically overnight, you can give them the next day, And so then they are able to withstand that process of being shipped.
And then you'll want to immediately get them into a warmed brooder.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. It's not a natural thing, obviously, to be shipped, but they're able to withstand it.
Yeah.
So when you get them, put them on the ground, put them in your brooder, give them food and water, and get them going.
Excellent. Well, these are just beautiful. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome. Certainly welcome.
Cappy, this smells divine.
I love cobbler.
What a gorgeous, gorgeous cobbler.
That's gotten a little brown.
Well, you are the princess of pastry, so I'm eager to see how you put this together. Cappy's a good friend of mine who I adore, and she does great work in the kitchen, and she's sharing a great summer recipe with us today. So what are we doing? We're combining peaches and blackberries?
Yeah, you could use blueberries, you could use nectarines, but this is my favorite late summer combination.
Yeah, yeah.
Just peaches peeled and cut up, the whole blackberries. Depending upon the tartness of the blackberries, you want to add about 1/3 cup of sugar, and they're not going to be cooked at all. They're just going to be tossed with the sugar.
All right, so you just mix them. It looks like about 50-50.
Yep, then we're going to make the dough, which is so fast.
This is what you're so good at. How many cups of flour?
1.5 cups of flour.
Okay.
Then we're going to put in a tablespoon of baking powder, a little bit of salt, about 1/2 teaspoon, and then just pulse the dry ingredients just to mix it. And then we're going to add the butter. And
3
the
tablespoons.
secret ingredient, in addition to the butter, is we're going to add a little bit of heavy cream.
Ooh.
Just a little bit, just about 1/4 cup.
1/4 cup of heavy cream.
And then just by using your hands or a spoon, we're just going to drop this over it. You could roll it out and make it more like a pie, but this is a rustic cobbler, and I think that this is absolutely the perfect summer dessert.
Yeah,
and it's not too sweet. Then you're going to drizzle a little more melted butter over the top.
Okay, it's getting better.
And a little bit of sugar. And then preheat the oven to 350 degrees, pop it in for 30 to 40 minutes.
You want to serve up a dish?
I would love to serve up a dish.
Gosh, I'll have an extra one around. There we go. Only if you'll have some with me.
Oh, I will definitely have some with you. Oh, yum. Blackberries and peaches.
Look at that.
Piping hot.
Now I'm going to mix a little bit for you. You know, my grandmother used to have 2 kinds of peaches, Red Havens and Albertas. And they were all Freestones. There's yours if you want to add that.
Thank you. I definitely want some whipped cream. Be careful, it is really hot.
I just have to taste it.
Good?
That is really great. And it's not too sweet, and the whipped cream is fantastic.
I like the whipped cream on it.
This is something you must try. It's a great way to take advantage of the fruits of the season. Excellent. You know, I have to say, I really enjoy exploring the possibilities of a landscape. And today we have a house in Georgia, a beautiful craftsman style house. Now, this belongs to Beth, and she tells me that it's on the foundation of her great-grandmother's house from around 1936. And it does have kind of a homestead feeling when you take a look at this enormous tree in the front. It looks like perhaps a big oak tree. So the house faces southwest, so we get a lot of hot sun coming at the house, but the tree obviously gives Beth a lot of protection, and that big generous porch looks very inviting. Now it looks like we have a blank slate to start with, and what I would do is probably anchor the corners with some tall evergreens. Now as you can see on this side of the house, it's not very interesting, so what I would do is probably take another large evergreen and place it down here, and then all along this bed, I would create a very generous bed that would come around and relate to the front, all the way up to the front step like that. Now, in between, Beth, I think what we could do is add some lower growing plants, like a rhythm of boxwood, and then in front of it, plant that beautiful Annabelle hydrangea with its creamy blooms. I think creamy white with your house would be very beautiful with this sort of apricot colored brick. Now the big evergreens could be hollies. In Georgia, there's so many great ones to choose from. There's Needlepoint, Nellie R. Stevens, Emily Bruner, and so forth, or even Foster Holly would be beautiful here. And I would take the same plant and bring it over here on the other side. You'd see it on the other side here. It's a little hard to tell from the tree. But then the bed would come on around. It looks like you've got some steps or stepping stones from the steps all the way out. And what I would do here is probably take a bed line that would run along the street like this, and the same way over here on this side. I would use those boxwoods here, and a boxwood on either side there, and boxwood here, and boxwood here, and then on the other side of the porch so it's balanced. And then in this space along the tree, because it's going to be hard to get something to grow here, I would grow a really tough ground cover. I would grow something like Euonymus coloratus or the winter creeper, or if you like monkey grass, liriope would do very well out here in this hot sun. And I would bring it all around the boxwood here and here and do the same thing on the other side. Now, since this porch is really an outdoor room, I would plant some gardenias all along in here, Beth, and the other side as well, so you get that wonderful fragrance. And you really have an opportunity, I think, here on this blank wall, and I believe you'll get enough sun if you wanted to grow a rose like New Dawn. It's one of my favorites. It's a great climbing rose that would grow up onto this wall, and it could even come across this part of the porch, which would be really charming. It would even add to the architecture and give it that sort of cottage look. And then in these beds across the front, I would go with a soft colored azalea, low growing along the front foundation like that. You could carry on with the white theme. You'd have the white hydrangeas, and then you would have white azaleas and the creamy sort of soft pink color of the New Dawn rose, and then of course the white gardenias. And I would keep these about at this height here, about only coming up about 2/3 on this wall. And then I would fill in, there may be enough shade here where you could grow some hosta, which would be beautiful growing out of the ground cover. And again, whatever ground cover you use here, I would use the same ground cover here and all the way around along the edge of the bed. And then in these planter boxes, since you get so much shade, try some of those wonderful double impatiens. They're so beautiful, and there's a creamy colored one, soft pink kind of cream colored one that could be planted in these planter boxes. And I'd actually allow something to spill out over the edge of it, like creeping jenny or some sort of cascading plant that will do well in that partial shade. I love the chartreuse color of creeping jenny. Well, it's a beautiful house. Congratulations. I love the fact that there's a family connection to it, and good luck with it, Beth. Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. And I hope along the way in the show you picked up some ideas that will help you add just a touch of charm in your garden home in any season. Until next time, from the Garden Home, I'm Alan Smith. More information about today's topic and other topics covered in this series can be found at plansmith.com.